DC has been turned into a literal green zone with massive security lockdown, tens of thousands of National Guardsmen and women, all to protect the inauguration of Joe Biden, of course, after that incursion into the Capitol on January 6th. What does that mean for the future of security in DC, around the country, and what are the nature of the actual threats that they're concerned about?
Great question. So we have the best Ken Klippenstein. He's a reporter at The Intercept in order to join us and discuss. Ken, welcome to the show and congratulations on the new job, my friend.
Thanks. Great to be with you guys.
Absolutely. So Ken, really just in the midst of this historic inauguration, we got 20-something thousand troops here in Washington. Got the news yesterday that the Pentagon's going to keep a contingent of 6,000 troops in D.C. for no particular reason. Just break down exactly what all of this means in the context of what seems like a pretty clear law enforcement failure that could have been solved with everything and all the resources that they had at their disposal at the time.
Yeah, well, my understanding is a lot of the deployment, while it's certainly eye-popping in some respects, just the sheer number of guardsmen that they've sent here, literally called parts of it a green zone now, evoking Iraq. My understanding is that a lot of it is also theater, security theater, the sort that you see in airports. The notion that they're going to be able to run, these serious insider threat assessments for thousands of guardsmen in the last, few days is ludicrous. And that's what I'm being told. And to, speak to your point about the intelligence failure that existed, initially, they all said, oh, we didn't have any intelligence about this. How are we supposed to know? I reported, and other media have also reported, that there was intelligence warning about this. I got a report from the Defense Department, which of course contains within it the National Guard, suggesting that there were serious concerns about civil unrest from specifically these far-right groups. And the report was so detailed that even mentioned QAnon groups, sovereign citizens, those sorts, and identified specifically the lack of acceptance of the legitimacy of the outcome of the election as one of the causes for unrest. So that's a very granular and detailed level of analysis coming from the Defense Department, but similar ones were coming out of the FBI and other law enforcement agencies as well. So it's just not true that they didn't have a sense that something like this could happen.
Yeah.
What is your understanding of the nature of the threats that they continue to be concerned about and whether or not those threats justified this insane military presence?
Well, part of the problem is that, this huge military presence, I've said it before on the show, that's sort of a sledgehammer approach, and what we might need is a scalpel. I mean, I know a lot of intelligence analysts. I was talking to one in the Department of Homeland Security who described how they got rid of their domestic extremism unit within the agency, and under the Trump administration, he was increasingly tasked with, this is, bear in mind, someone who has top secret security clearance, following students from overseas who had overstayed their visas. And he thought it was ludicrous that, he'd undergone all this training and has all these clearances and access to just be doing stuff that any sort of local, law enforcement could be handling. So it seems more to me that the resources, perhaps are there. It's just that they're being used on the wrong things. And so this sort of huge buildup of the sort that almost looks like a movie, I wonder how useful that's going to be. And, the counterintelligence people I talk to, say that to some extent, this is going to be signaling to the cameras to say, hey, look at us. Look at how seriously we're taking this now after we dropped the ball in the last one. But this is not going to do a whole lot to stop the sorts of lone wolf attacks that don't leave a whole lot of intelligence. Those sorts of things may not even be within the purview of law enforcement intelligence. That may be, underlying problems in the society that you have to address in a different way than with law enforcement.
Yeah, Ken, I think you're absolutely right. This is as much of a show and perhaps even a justification of funding and perhaps even trying to get more funding than it is about security. And let's talk about that one final time. People keep talking about a new national security law. We need new, justifications. We need new authorities for the intelligence community. You cover this. They have everything they need, as I understand it. All of the domestic or the terrorism laws passed in 2001 and more, which a lot of people have even said those were an overreach, give them plenty of purview to do whatever that they need to do with existing resources, no?
Yeah, it's almost like the Simpsons meme where it's like, we've tried nothing and nothing's worked. Or it's like they have all these resources, but it's not, they're not being brought to bear against these domestic groups. As I said, they've closed down the agencies that handle these things. That's not a question of resources. That's a question of focus and mission. So to answer your question, I'll give you an example. After 9/11, they established, of course, Department of Homeland Security. And then another part of that a lot of people don't know, they have things called fusion centers, these nodes, a huge network. Every state across the country has at least one fusion center. I spent a lot of time talking to analysts and getting things under the Freedom of Information Act. When you look at the intelligence reports that these places are putting out, they're not focused on these groups. They're focused on astonishingly basic law enforcement matters like domestic disturbances. Somebody stole a bike from someone's yard. I saw one intelligence report that was about some oil leaking out of someone's driveway into someone else's yard or something like that. And so the problem is these agencies have huge resources, but they're just not focused on things that we need them to be focused on. And that seems more a question of mission rather than increasing the size or resources or budget of these agencies.
Yeah.
And where does that misallocation stem from? I mean, does that come from the leadership of the agencies? Does it come from the president? Does it come from the rank and file? Like, what is the root of that problem that created? I mean, last time we had you on, you said the basic reason why they were unable to protect the Capitol and prepare properly for that threat is they just had this massive ideological blind spot. Where does that originate from?
Well, some of it is that this is big business, and so they're just moving contracts around, and they've got to seem useful. And the reality is, there's not an enormous terror threat. I think that there's a good case to be made for that the far right extremist groups, not just white supremacists, but anti-government militia groups and things like that, that certainly increased, but that's still a relatively small portion of the country. And so these places have to seem busy. And then that invariably means focusing. I'll give you a heartbreaking example. I was looking at one fusion center, I believe it was in Texas. They had case after case of this intelligence center issuing reports on people trying to do suicide by cop, where they call 911 and try to get the police to respond to them and kill them. And so these are matters that would seem to be, that's stuff that mental health professionals should be handling. We don't need these guys with security clearances and intelligence training to be responding to stuff. It's not even so much that it's their fault in those cases. It's just the wrong, you're using the wrong tool in your toolbox for the wrong type of solution. But why do they not respond to this stuff? Well, you've got a president that's legitimized a lot of this, and people are, when I talk to folks in the intelligence community, if they put out an intelligence product that is going to get flagged by, a political appointee or, some Trump crony, your career could be over. So for a president to, have any sort of sympathy for these kind of groups creates a lot of problems downstream for law enforcement. To speak to the Capitol unrest, one of the reasons cited by Capitol Police for not, sending in National Guard or requesting them was that they were worried about the optics. That's a kind of polite way of saying that's going to look bad politically because we're bringing force against, frankly, people that are Trump supporters, and so that just makes it really hard on law enforcement to be able to have the confidence to respond.
No, I think that's right. And it's an important point. And that's why, it matters who the president is. And this is an important and big, failure on Trump from his behalf. Ken, thanks for joining us, man, breaking this all down on this historic day. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, great to see you, Ken. Congrats again. Of course.
Thank you.
And we'll have more Rising for you after this.